We're going to talk to the Vice President of Parents Defending Education, which is rebranding and expanding. So I don't know if I say PDE anymore or just DE. Here's Sarah Parshall Perry. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me today.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. Love your voice. Another girl with a deep
you.
voice. Yeah, baby.
You got it.
All right. So Parents Defending Education has been fighting for a long time with just, primary school, elementary school, junior high, high school. But it's time to take the fight bigger, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. We have been working in the K through 12 space for years now, but really what we're seeing is some of the most egregious policies are coming from higher education. Remember, there was so much attention drawn to all of the university practices that were concerning specifically race and sex discrimination, as we saw from the Students of Fair Admissions series of cases 2 years ago at the Supreme Court. It really put a fine point on what's happening behind the scenes when Harvard University and UNC Chapel Hill were using essentially race metrics where they were grading and weighting admissions candidates based on their status and protected characteristics. So this is something that we thought is really about time to address, because a lot of our kids, a lot of our parents that have kids who were in the K through 12 programs, those individuals who are members of our organization have now grown up and they now have children in college. I myself have two in college, and it's time for our program to be able to investigate things like accreditation and awards of scholarships and financial aid and what we're seeing taught in these classes that could be violative of longstanding civil rights law.
Yes, and I'm so glad to hear you say that in one sentence, because that kind of just sums up everything we're going to talk about today. Because what's going on the college campuses right now, I never thought that I would say I couldn't fathom of it. I never dreamt that in the America I grew up in that people would even think this way, feel this way. But I guess when you let enough people in from other countries who hate America before they get here, and issues come up that they want to scream and yell about and make us look like a third world country, I guess that's what we get, right?
Well, that's exactly it. It's always sort of the petri dish for American culture, isn't it? When you get into education, you can recognize exactly how sort of divergent we become in our thinking between one class and another. And that's not what our founders envisioned for the country. It's certainly not what the progenitors of the civil rights movement wanted for America, an America that was colorblind, where individuals were judged on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. And unfortunately, what we're seeing right now is the perpetuation of the victim-oppressor narrative. And this is a function of what we saw through critical race theory and to a lesser extent, but now in increasing measure, critical gender theory, where you separate people into victim and oppressor classes. And that's not only not good for American education, it's not good for American culture either.
Right. And it sends the wrong message to what we're going to put up with. So I think the approach that you're taking to say, you know what, you're not off limits either, and that the president is revoking these student visas and however they got here, he's saying, nope, time to go home. If this is how you're going to act, you got to go. But the bigger problem, and I think, sir, I'm, pot, kettle, you're black, whatever thing. Most of these are white kids who went to those colleges who are wearing scarves around their face and hiding their identity. They're not foreigners.
No, that's exactly it. And in fact, what's really frustrating, I think, to me, is the fact that there has been this perpetuation, and these kids who have been indoctrinated in K through 12 schools have gone into higher education, which has been beholden to liberal interests and been lost to us to a great extent for a long time, already programmed to believe certain things about how America is fundamentally racist and how the founders were fundamentally racist and how our entire foundation is built on the race essentialism of the 1619 Project. And so they've gone in with a pre-cooked series of ideas about whether or not they are in an America that sees people with a victim mentality, and they've perpetuated that mentality themselves. I think they've bought into the lie of allyship and social justice warriorness, and what we're seeing now is a pretty sloppy outcome because we've got very poor academic outcomes. Remember, our National Association of Education Placement scores for 8th graders show about only 27% of kids in America are literate in math. 30% of kids in America are literate on grade level for English, and we send those kids now into higher education. And they've been indoctrinated, but they sure as heck have not gotten the fundamentals.
Right. And, the parents who paid for those educations have got to be seriously mad, unless they believe that way, too.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I will tell you, if they've gotten good values teaching at home and they've been raised in a way to see everyone as created equal, all worth and value for every single person, this should be a pretty easy sort of stalwart moral compass. I'd like to think both of my kids who are in college went into college with that moral compass intact. They call and ask me all the time about what their professors are teaching and what my thoughts are, and we've got a great open relationship. But for parents who don't have that kind of relationship with their kids, they have to rely on the protections of federal civil rights law, and we're not seeing them enforced fairly and accurately at a lot of these universities.
Yeah. And we're going to go there, folks, because we have one that's not very far from where we live who is getting called out by y'all. It's SIUE. Or SIUC,
yep, that's exactly,
actually.
SIUC, that's exactly it. We, when we launched our higher education initiative and rebranded our organization from Parents Defending Education to Defending Education, we launched 4 federal civil rights complaints, one at the University of California, Berkeley, one at Indiana University, one at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and one at University of Southern Illinois, Carbondale. And what we discovered at Carbondale, ironically, considering the fact that there were a number of very liberal regular offenders on the list of some of these universities who automatically, we know, lean left of center. UC Berkeley, University of Wisconsin-Madison, for example. Mm-hmm. I got to tell you, what we saw at SIUC was pretty astonishing. We located 33 awards, funds, scholarships, or fellowships only available to certain students based on their race or their sex. 33 of them, and they're all managed, they're all awarded through SIUC's Vice Chancellor for Anti-Racism, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office, which is often the case. A lot of these DEI offices are the ones that are maintaining, expanding, and awarding these race discriminatory or sex discriminatory policies and funds and scholarships. But the Supreme Court and Students for Fair Admission made very clear that this is something that we are not going to tolerate, that eliminating race discrimination means eliminating all of it. And apparently SIUC didn't get the message.
Well, they're in Illinois. And that's mini California, quasi-China. So
Thank you, Governor Pritzker.
Yeah, and some people just think he's the bee's knees. I'm like, how in God's name does anybody think this man is doing a good job? They are falling apart over there, and it sounds like the colleges are following behind him. Not all of them. Some of them are doing a great job, and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, teaching your children. But I don't know how this stuff sneaks in. It's just like we go for 20 years, Sarah. We go for 25 years, and we're all hunky-dory, and all of a sudden our kid comes home, we're having dinner, and they're saying things that we've never discussed as a family, so it sure as heck didn't come from us. And now we have to argue with our children over the basics, the fundamentals of biology.
Right.
It's insanity.
Right, that's exactly it. Like, listen, we're about to hear a very, very significant Supreme Court case. On April 22nd, we're going to hear a case argued called Mahmoud versus Taylor. And this is a series of religious parents, Orthodox Christians, Muslims, and Jews, who've all filed suit specifically because their 6- and 7-year-old children were given gender identity lessons in public school format without the ability to opt out. Every one of them has said this is a violation of our religious beliefs. Finally, we've seen the Supreme Court take up an issue on parental rights and a lot of this gender identitarianism that we're seeing in public education, both in K through 12 and higher education. And the Supreme Court has got to root it out, but it's got to make very, very clear that it's the parents who have the right to direct the care upbringing, health, and education of their children, not educators. And I think a lot of schools, including in higher education, have not gotten that missive.
It befuddles me. And when my little grandson came up, he didn't hear it at school, but he heard it on YouTube. And he said, "How can a person be a they, them?" I said, "They can't." And he said, "But this person said that they're a they, them." I said, "That's plural. One person can't be a they." So it's biologically and it's grammatically confusing our children. It doesn't exist, obviously. You're just a tomboy. That's basically,
right.
What it was. You might be a lesbian on top of that, but you're not a they, them.
Correct.
What happened to the extinction level event of the tomboy? I want to know what happened to that.
Well, that's exactly it. Having been one myself and having raised a daughter who is now playing college volleyball on a Title IX scholarship at Belmont Abbey College, which thrills me to no end. But I tell you what, she was a real tomboy, probably a result of her athletic giftedness, and thank God for federal civil rights protections. And hopefully she will never have to play against a biological male. But the NCAA, again, that manages and oversees all of these athletic programs and all of these universities, the largest membership association in the country, to the tune of $1.2 billion in membership fees from these universities, has decided they're going to pass the buck and tell each one of the colleges and universities, if they maintain a sports program, they pick their own rules on whether or not biological men can compete against women. Well, I don't want my daughter getting a concussion, and I'm sure hoping that if the Department of Education begins to open more civil rights complaints investigation into these higher education institutions, like it just did at the University of Pennsylvania over the Leah Thomas swimming debacle, when she divested a biological woman of the 500-meter freestyle gold medal, that is a significant opportunity to really pin back the ears of a lot of this nonsense.
Yeah, and it's funny you say pin back the ears. That's hilarious. But I'm just saying, if I'm in boxing and all of a sudden I come to the gold medal match and there is a dude there, I want brass knuckles to level the field.
I'm
just saying.
That's exactly it.
Because that's how much of a difference that punch is going to feel. And just take a knee. You know what, girls? Teams, take a knee. If they kick you out of the tournament, they kick you out of the tournament. But guess what? You're going to stay in the circle of people with common sense. This is stupid. You don't see any girls trying to get into boys' sports this way. You might see women kicking for football teams or whatever in small, insignificant ways, but not in physical contact where, the rubber meets the road. It's just not going to happen. So this has to stop. So where do people learn more about what y'all are doing at PDE with the DE?
So you can go to defendinged.org. Very simple, defendinged.org. And you can follow my work online as well at Sarah P. Perry on X.
All right. Do it because, and it's Perry, P-E-R-R-Y.
R-R-Y.
Not
P-A. You got it.
So people want to always spell it wrong. All right. Sarah, thank you for being here today. I appreciate your perspective, your answers, and what y'all are doing. And we've got to keep defending education or it's just going to get more squirrely.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Sarah. Bye-bye.